Having skills is not enough. You actually need to care about the problem that you're working on. What is the one thing that you're bringing that is unique? When there's no data, intuition is the thing that's going to guide you. And the only way to have the right intuition is when you constantly feeling the pain. A lot of startups is about ability to feel pain. The more pain that you're able to feel, the greater the chances that you can get to unique insights, you can build something which is unique and find your way to like product market fit.
Welcome everyone to this new episode of Lister Cam. Super excited to be here today with Anmol Sood. Anmol, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Super excited to have you on the podcast. I have many questions for you, but maybe for the people who might not know you, what would be like your 2-3 liner at a conference meeting other people so that you can present yourself?
Yeah, I'm Anmol. I'm the founder of Alai. At Alai, we help people make high quality presentations quickly. Before Alai, I spent 5 years at Meta, where I was a staff engineer. I live in New York. I used to live in California before. I grew up in India, but I've been in the US for the last 7 years.
I'll get right into the interesting things. So you're a builder. You were at Meta before. I think that those are two different things. I would love to deep dive maybe into how you've built your skill set. And I would love to ask you from an angle, not necessarily technically, but like solving problems, a kind of approach. So maybe if you can share like a few of the previous experiences and how you've developed your curiosity through time to being a founder and solving problem and going from Meta to YC.
A bunch of things go into it. One is, actually having the skills. But two is also realizing what sort of problems do you actually care about. I feel like just having skills is not enough. You actually need to care about the problem that you're working on. And that's been my philosophy ever since I started, like 7 years ago when I got out of college and I started working at Meta. I wanted to really work on problems that I care about because I thought that was the best way to build my skills. Only when I'm motivated to work really, really hard will I build my skills. So for the first few years, I worked on a product called Facebook Jobs, where we help people find jobs on Facebook. And it felt very meaningful, and I felt like it was the perfect way to get my career started. I got to do a lot of different things, like build apps, build machine learning models. And then I always wanted to get like different skills because the industry is very broad and you need a lot of very different skills. So I did that for a few years. Then I worked on virtual reality at Meta because that was the hardest thing at that point of time. And I was curious. We're building something like Zoom in virtual reality. It did not become super big, but I thought it was another problem that I really cared about. How can we make meetings more effective? Can we make remote work more effective where people feel connected? And as I was working on these problems, I was gaining new skills, gaining new technical skills, but also learning how to think about problems, how to think about customers, and what is it that customers value. And then after 5 years at Meta, I felt like, okay, I'd done enough of that. The last thing which I worked on Meta was Threads. And that was one of the most successful products that we worked at, where it grew really quickly. I thought I had enough of the big company experience. I knew how to build products. I felt a lot of confidence in my skills to build stuff. I always knew I wanted to start up, and it felt like the perfect time with everything happening in AI. So then it was about finding a problem again, which I cared about, using my skills, knowing what is the new things which is happening, where are gaps emerging in the industry, given that AI is a new thing, and there's so many things which can now be done differently and rethought from first principles. So those are like some of the steps. And then finally we got into this space of building presentations, which I felt was very, very meaningful. How to make sure that people can tell their own stories effectively and they don't have to depend upon like either hiring a designer or like just getting satisfied with a low quality deck. That felt very meaningful and felt like the perfect time to build something meaningful out of it. Yeah.
This is very interesting. And there are a lot of questions here because at Meta and in your previous experiences, you were solving different problems, like from the surface, than what Alai is currently solving. So maybe I'll do more of an AI engineer question at this moment. So you're a technical co-founder. I would like to pick your brain on how to iterate on a product nowadays. You have different buckets. You can go B2C, B2B, you can have hybrids. There is a lot of theory out there, but I would love to hear from you. What have you learned in the last 2 years that might have been different from how things were working at your time at Meta, for example? Maybe you can get into like some tools that you pick up, but also like the way you're thinking about building team, hiring talents, aligning on a mission from a leader and a technology standpoint. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And honestly, like on that front, I've had to like unlearn a lot of stuff that I learned at Meta. As in, like when you're at a big company, you have like almost infinite resources. You can do a lot of things. You don't need to move as fast just because the company has a core business. So when we started Live, we knew the problem. that we wanted to solve. But we were learning these things for the first time, like how to do things when you have very limited resources, when you don't have customers, and when you have to just get started off the ground. And I think that is where you just really need to identify like what is the one thing, and it can be just one thing that you're bringing that is unique, and who are the people who are going to care about it in the short term. Not for that perfect product that you're going to build 5 years from then, but for even for the first version, which is not going to be very good, which is going to take longer than you think it would. But you have to find that wedge of people who would still be willing to use a product that is not very good. And in our case, like we had this very interesting decision to make, like building a presentation company. Do we directly target businesses or do we directly target consumers first? Because like a lot of different industries, a lot of different kinds of people make presentations. And for a while, we were not making a clear decision, and we realized that was hindering us because when you don't make a clear decision, there's no clear focus point. The kind of product which would work for businesses versus for consumers is very, very different. Ultimately, what we realized was like in this space, there's so much more, even though AI has become really good, there's a lot of improvement which is still required. And it's still a fairly early stage in terms of AI being able to generate great visuals, like understanding the spatial arrangement of slides and all of that, that we decided to focus on an audience which was okay to live at the cutting edge. And we felt that was like consumers, prosumers, so like startup founders, marketers at small companies, like consultants, etc., like at small companies. So these were people who were not necessarily bogged down by all the regulation of the companies, of all the security policies of the companies. It's not that they had to use PowerPoint, but they were still willing to use something new as long as it helped them. So that's the wedge that we focused on. Like we built a very consumer focused product, which we just launched last week. But yeah, I think there's no one clear formula. It very much depends upon your use case and what exactly are you trying to do. And for us, even though there was no clear way to decide, now we feel very confident about the choice that we have made.
Amazing. I want to frame how I see things and hear from your experience what you would do differently. Does that sound cool?
Yeah, awesome.
I feel that there is such a lot of pain when you don't have enough active users or you don't have enough usage of what you're building, that I would even build things for free. It's almost like you want to pay people so that they can use what you've built and get feedback. I think that B2B contracts are the best because if you can solve something very specific, even though it's hard coded and it will just work for that client, you just validated something new,
Yeah.
that there is a conversion here. But also, if you don't have enough usage of what you've built to understand patterns, then you're in another problem, which is maybe you will have a few B2B relationships that you're getting money for, but you're not getting anywhere in terms of like your ICP, ideal customer profile, or all these kind of concepts that needs to create cohesion around the mission of the company, where we're heading, how we're aligning sales, marketing, etc. And I find it very hard. And I think that my takeaway would be, let's try to get the best people I can put my hands on, meaning the smartest people that work at the best jobs, and what are their problems with what I'm currently building, giving them access for free and trying to convert them to even early paid users to a small fee or something, so that I convert revenue, I get my learnings, and I'm talking to smart people. And I would do that over and over and try to increase the gap of revenue and then the different options that I have to like growing the product, but with solid common point of patterns. That's how I see things today. What do you think? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great strategy. Like finding some partners who you can really learn from. One, because they experience the problem every day. And two, just because they already see the value in your product. They are ready to build with you and get more and more value as your product gets better. So that is true. I also think there's no amount of data, like as in like when you're pre-product market fit, it's not like an analytical decision purely. Like this, you're not going to have the numbers to like A/B test like the big companies. The very fact of creating something new, it takes a lot of vision, and that vision is it can be inspired from data, but a lot of it has to come from like your first principles and your unique view of the world. And I think like even when you're working with those early partners, you have to not just accept any revenue which comes your way, because sometimes people might even pay you. They might even sign for a trial or a pilot, but as you start working with them, you'll realize that the problem that they are trying to solve is very, very different. Like very often when you try to sell to a business, the reason the person even engages with you is not because they want to use your product or they want to like change their workflows. It's just because they want to get promoted at that company. Like they are like a VP or a director at a company and they want to get promoted, which is a very different problem from what you're trying to solve, is like make the best product in a certain category. So you need to understand their incentives. you need to understand that, okay, if you do a partnership with them, will it actually be the best path for you to learn more about your product? And that is it, because as a startup, you get to take like only as many shots. You can only take one shot at a time. And amongst all your options, even if when you're getting revenue on some parts, you might say no to them just because you think there are like other ways in which you're going to learn even faster. And yeah, so it can be a tough choice, but yes, like in a lot of cases, finding any people who are willing to pay for your product is a great litmus test, because very often you will realize the answer is no.
Yeah, I agree with you. And on the A/B testing on a recent episode, it was like, just see 5 users using what you've built and you will see what's wrong. Just two might be enough, especially at an early stage.
Yeah. Or even honestly, just you yourself, like, especially if you're building in a space where
Yeah.
you understand the problem. Like, very often people are like, okay, I need to find a user who can give me feedback. Like, my take is always like, okay, if you understand the problem, then be honest to yourself, be convinced that you yourself will use it. And I find like, yeah, like, I think like the easiest person to lie to is your own self. But that is like the most dangerous thing in the startup. Like, when you start lying to yourself, you don't see things clearly. But yeah, very often, like for the first 12 months, we're not even showing a product to that many users. We're like, okay, we don't think this is good enough. It's not even worth like trying to go out there and find someone, because we think it's not meeting our bar. Only when we thought that, okay, this is now meeting a bar, we feel confident about it, then we started trying to get customers and get users, because otherwise there's just more work to do and there's more to like prove to our own selves before we prove anything to anyone else.
I also believe that at an early stage, you kind of need to develop an intuition on top of your first principles
Yeah.
for who you're talking to. And so I think that what is underappreciated is that for me to have an intuition of why a specific user would use that product in that specific use case, I need to understand them to a level where I would almost be able to do their job. Because you can do their job, you're just like, oh no, but you just need to do this and that. One piece that I want to add on top of that before getting your thoughts on this. Sometimes we have ideas of things to build that already exist or can be solved way easier. Or sometimes we're just getting attached to how to solve a specific problem, but it's not worth solving in the first place because you can just use that tool that already exists and that is going in that direction. Two thoughts here. What do you think about the intuition piece? And what do you think about the other tool out there that you might want to try and test? What have worked for me also in the past is I take the problem, I try to use every solution out there to solve that specific problem, and I'm trying to see the gaps. And then I can like come back to what I'm building and understand, okay, so maybe I can copy that because it makes sense. Maybe that doesn't make sense to put this, and maybe I can use that to like move on that direction. So a few thoughts to you here to share, but I'm sure that you'll have interesting takeaways and notes.
So let's first start with the intuition piece. I think, yeah, intuition is very, very important, because, yeah, like when there's no data, intuition is the thing that's going to guide you. And you want to be guided by the right kind of intuition. And the only way to have the right intuition is when you constantly feeling the pain. So, for example, in our case, like helping people build presentations with AI, we had to like build a lot of these presentations ourselves, like try to build them in PowerPoint or like in other tools and see like, okay, what is it about presentations? Why is it so hard? Why can't people do it well? Why is it that these companies are just not able to solve the problem even though they are there for like 20 years? As in, very often, especially with technical founders, what happens is that they just think of an idea and they immediately start to build it. That happened to a little bit to us as well in the early couple of months. But then we had to take like almost like a few weeks to just like really immerse ourselves in the problem, feel it. And then I feel like only when you're feeling the problem constantly, even right now, even though we have felt the problem for a long time, we have to constantly be making presentations, constantly be trying out other products, constantly be trying out like, okay, this is exactly why Alai is going to do better. Because until unless you feel the pain, you just start thinking in very, very abstract terms. And that's not the right way to think, at least for me. So that is on intuition. I think on competitors and like trying out other products, I think it's always a great idea. One has to do it carefully though, because very often when you just try out all the other products, you just get into this trap of trying to copy them or trying to do the same things which they're doing or maybe 10% better. So I think it is a great idea to try out those products. Sometimes they might already be solving the problem and you have to ask yourself, what is your unique angle? But at the same point of time, some amount of original thinking is always required in the startup. You have to be willing to identify the points where you disagree with like every single company out there and you think this is something that could be done differently. Because otherwise, if you don't, then you might as well join one of those companies. You might like they're already there, they're already building those things. So while one should try out all the products which exist in the space and one should have an honest opinion of them, one should also be careful that you don't really just start blindly copying them or start doing every single thing which they're doing, because that feels like the lazy option. And with startups, very often like the lazy option is the wrong option. You have to like feel more pain. A lot of startups is about ability to feel pain. The more pain that you're able to feel, the greater the chances that you can get to unique insights. You can build something which is unique, find your way to like product market fit.
That's so interesting. I have the Alai website right here.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'll just share my screen really quick.
Awesome. That would be fun.
Nice website. I'm sure like a lot of people are curious about the YC Vibe websites, but it's definitely bespoke, rightfully because of presentations. So I'm scrolling through the website. Slides are more than visual. They're signals of credibility. And so it's a very to the point, direct website. You have a pricing, a logging, a blog, and a try for free. So my question to you would be exactly on what we were commenting. When you think about presentations, so you have PowerPoints, Canva, Figma. Then you have new tools, GenSpark, for example, Gamma. It looks like a problem that a lot of people are trying to solve. And to your point about the intuition and not doing what everyone's doing, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what does that mean, but apply to Alai and like how you've been building. Maybe there is something you cannot share, but it would be cool to hear your thoughts that you were sharing, but applied to what you're currently building. Would that be okay?
Yeah, for sure. I'll start with a little bit on the website. A lot of our intention was to basically not make false promises, especially in this era of AI. What we see is that a lot of companies make very, very big promises on the marketing side. They treat AI like magic, that, okay, AI will do everything, but they don't really show much. Like everything is hidden behind like paywalls or other things. Whereas, like, from our website itself, we wanted to show you the kind of slides that we can create on Alai. These are exactly the kind of slides that anyone can create on Alai. So we wanted to be very real and we did not want to set a promise that's too out there. We know like AI is getting better. At the same point of time, it's not perfect, but we want to always show the user where we are so that they can make an informed choice and not just get washed away in the marketing material. Now coming to like why Alai, like why should we even have Alai in the first place? You mentioned all those players, like why are they not enough? Do we really need another player? I think it gets down to a couple of points. One, I'll start by talking about like PowerPoint, Canva, Figma slides, Google slides. They're like all sort of in the same bucket, where they build like some very, very powerful systems like over like tens of years now. But I think it's almost that they have lost sight of the user, or they're only building for a user who's like a designer, who's very, very skilled in using these things, who understands the principles of design, who understands spacing. And even then, like even for those kind of people, it takes them so long. Anytime you ask someone how long it took you to create this presentation, people are talking about order of days or like weeks. Because very often, like on PowerPoint, this is what you do. Like you put some text boxes in, you realize it doesn't look great. Then you try to find a template and then you try to like fit your content in your templates. And then you move some boxes around. It's a lot of these like small tasks, like menial tasks, like when you're just tweaking pixels around. And there isn't much AI. Like even though like ChatGPT came out 3 years ago, they haven't really managed to find a way to integrate AI into all of that. Or even when they do it, it's very piecemeal. It's not really rethinking of the product through AI. So I think in that category, a product is just way superior. It's a lot easier to use. You don't need to be a professional designer. You can just get started, give us your content, and you can get to like a very, very good first draft very quickly. Now, obviously, there are like other players who have tried this. Like there's GenSpark, there's Gamma, and all of that. Over there, we try to differentiate on the following front. One, we want our slides to be the highest quality. With Gamma, very often what people say is that, oh, it is quick, you get slides with AI. But most people feel that the slides actually don't look good. Like it feels like they're compromising on quality. Like they're getting some ease, but they're compromising on quality. Even with GenSpark, you're prompting and then you prompt again. You constantly get stuck in this prompt loop where something is not perfect. You again write another prompt and then it takes another 5 minutes for it to like do something. So the only way to edit those slides is via prompting. And we feel that is also not great. We feel like both humans and AI should be able to work together while making the perfect slide. So which means that we care about two things where we go to deepest. Number one is quality. We believe that we do give the highest quality first draft in the market today. Like people can try a product and find it out for themselves. It's much higher quality than Gamma. And number two is it's also that we realize that the slide is not just built once. Even the best designers, they don't end up with a perfect vision of a slide. They put something out there and then they need to like iterate upon it a couple of times, try out many different ideas. And that is where we like uniquely shine out. So every time you make a slide with AI on Alai, we show you 4 different options. And then we don't keep you there. Like once you select an option, there are many different ways to explore other ideas. The canvas is fully responsive, so you can move things around. So basically, yeah, now I'm getting into like a bunch of technical details, but there's like a whole lot of thinking and unique aspects of what we do that goes into delivering on this promise of quality and simplicity. The way we think of Alai is that it's the only product which keeps it simple, but also gives you the highest quality of output. And we are very proud. We have worked very hard to get there, and we are very proud of like us being the only player in that space. Yeah.
I love it. And this is a common pattern that I really enjoy to see, which is maximum quality with the simplest user experience. And I feel that a lot of the unlocks with AI in the last 12 months, maybe, has been to create those bespoke experiences that just understand you and give you options. And it's not like I need to prompt what I want. The more it can understand where I'm heading, and based on my previous inputs, I'm anticipating what you might need and I'm giving you options without you feeling overwhelmed. So it's like a super intuitive process, and it's like, oh, this understands me. And not only it understands me, but it delivers on that premium, bespoke vibe, style, design. Then you have something very powerful. I'm not speaking only about slides. I'm speaking about any user experience that is like that. When you can abstract complexity, make it fun while guiding you towards where you want. Because let's be real, people don't know what they want. They know when they see it, they know that, oh yeah, that feels right, but they have no idea how to describe what they want. They can just say, yeah, I like that. That makes sense. Or they can just, like when you review your Cloud Code plan and you're like, that's absolutely not what I want. This is not the direction that we want to go right now. Sometimes the fun thing about Cloud Code is I just skim it and I will feel that it's not the right direction. And that applies also to slides, to creative things. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel like you captured it very well, where no one really knows what they want upfront. It is not a process of knowing, it is a process of discovery, where you start with something and you are like, okay, this is a good start and this is how it can get better. And then you iterate upon it. I think like what good AI tools do and like what we try to do is the following, where we think that if we can take away all the tedious work away from the user, where they don't have to like do the manual things like aligning text boxes or setting the right space or padding or like 100 other CSS properties themselves, only when you free users of those menial tasks can they actually step back and think of the slide or whatever they're working on at a higher level. Because otherwise, the other things just get in the way. You lose all your time, and you look at your clock and you're like, oh, it's already 3 hours and you have nothing. But yes, I think to enable this process of discovery, we have to take out all the busy work, take out all the things which slow people down. And it's not about trying to replace people. We think it's about how do we make people do higher quality work. Because I feel like if what we got from AI was just a lot of work, but lower quality or the same quality, then it's not good enough. Then it's just like slop. But what we want to be doing is put in a lot of AI so that what you do is a lot higher quality and it takes you a lot lesser time. And yes, it's very often, even in terms of interface, as you mentioned, if you ask people for what they want, they're not going to be able to figure it out. It's about how you take the least amount of information from them and then help them find what they actually want or by this process of discovery. So what good design and what good products do is they make that discovery process seamless. They make it easy and they make it quick. That's what we try to do.
I love it. Okay, so I want to talk about speed. There is a recent video of YC about the 7 powers, recommended book, and they talk about that 8th power, which is speed as a moat. But I want to be more practical in the way we discuss this. I found very hard to understand what speed and execution needs to look like so that you're efficient. And you mentioned yourself earlier, you don't want to start copying all the features that others are doing. You want to make sure that you have a very specific directions, and then you can pick some things along the way, but you need to have your own direction, else you just need to go and work at this company because you'll have a better time. You don't want to build someone else's product. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And it's not part of having that founder vision, at least from my perspective. And so my question to you is, how do you manage speed and building? I personally feel, just to give you more material to like maybe push back or share other aspects of how you think, but I personally see this as, especially in early stages, I need to ship features very consistently and I must not overthink things. And I would even prioritize like having a weekly rhythm of shipping things more than like making sure the perfect schema in the database, the perfect login system. And I'm not saying that we need to develop tech debt, but I think that there is a balance here between shipping something and just saying because we might just release it and no one is using it. How do you see this from building Alai and your previous experiences? Because that has changed a lot in the last months and years too.
Awesome. Yeah. Basically, feel like if I had to like talk about just one word, I like talking about velocity a lot more than speed because I think the direction is as important. If you're going into the wrong direction with a lot of speed, it's not going to help you. I think it's still helpful to have more speed if you're going in the wrong direction because you find out quicker that you're in the wrong direction. But I think the best case outcome or like what you should optimize for is velocity, where you're moving in the right direction with a very high speed. And that is where I think you need to look at different things differently. Even when you're building a product, you have to think about what is the core of the product? What is something which you know is definitely going to be there? And you want to do it with a high quality because you know that every feature that you build is going to be built upon that foundation, upon that platform. So if your foundation is shaky, like any building, it will just collapse. Even though if you are able to move very fast this week, 2 months down the road, you will be spending a lot of time just changing things completely. So there are like cases where you're moving with a fast velocity means like building that feature slowly, thinking about a design in all those cases. But I think in the startup, there are like a lot of areas which are not foundational, where if you have a good foundation, you can just put a prototype out there. You can think about it today. You can have a prototype by the evening, and then 2 days later, you can just ship it and get real feedback from customers. So there are a lot of those things where you can actually move very, very fast, and you should not be overthinking it. You should not be spending like weeks in design, etc. A lot of the art of building a startup is recognizing which things you really go slow on. You really intentionally make every choice, every design decision, every technical decision. And that's like a small minority of decisions. But I think what some people get wrong is that they try to go fast on everything. And then in 3 months, they realize that, okay, they have to like literally like burn it all down, restart, and then they become really slow. We want to go fast, not only for a week or a month. We want to go fast for years. And then choosing between what is the things which are foundational versus what are things where we can just throw them away if they don't work out. That is a very crucial choice, which we have to intentionally make. So I think everyone realizes that it's just about how do we be intentional in those choices and be very, very clear. Just explicitly say it. So like when we talk to our team, we very clearly try to say that, okay, this is a prototype. We are willing to throw it away. Let's go as fast as we can. And sometimes we say, look, this is critical. Let's slow down. Let's actually think about it and let's do the right thing instead of like shipping this Friday. So like with everything in life, there is a balance to be struck here.
Yeah, but I feel that the balance in life is very hard to describe. I feel that if you haven't gotten granular with all those concepts and have had the pain in specific situations yourself, it's very hard to grasp that balance. It's like you can listen to as much content like this, but until you haven't experienced it and faced an exact situation where you need to balance that trade-off, it's very hard because in your situation with Alai, for example, you might share a specific example that would not apply in another example because
Yeah.
the situation is slightly different and it requires a different assessments, which comes back to first principles, as you mentioned earlier. I want to keep going in that direction because I have another interesting question for you. And you mentioned an MVP. And Alai is building bespoke premium presentations. This is the way I think about it. At an early stage, especially with all the tools that we have, we cannot have bad looking apps.
Yeah.
That said, it's very hard to have them perfect. It's very hard to have like the right UX in the first place. And there is a lot of time that can be spent in design. Whereas what you want really, from my opinion, is what is the output that I'm looking for that solve as much pain as possible, to your earlier point. And so how do you balance building fast, building the right user experience and the right output while making sure that, well, you still have a beautiful product and you balance everything basically? Do you have any thoughts on how this balance looks like for you at Alai at least?
Yeah, I think it's about setting the right priorities and just limiting it to one or two priorities, which is like, as I mentioned, as in with Alive, we knew that the place where we want to differentiate or the axis on which we want to differentiate is quality while keeping it simple. We do not want to become PowerPoint and we do not want to stay basic like Gamma. We want quality, but we still want to keep it simple. And that was a priority. And then everything, all those decisions stem from that priority. So what does that mean? Does the website need to look good? Yes, it needs to look good because people will start feeling the design quality right from the moment they'll first look at an eye. Do the slides need to feel great? Does the design need to be good? Yes, it needs to be because this is the core value prop. The only reason for you to use a line and not to use like a completely free tool like PowerPoint is the quality and the look of it. So that is like just core to a business. A lot of other things are not core to a business. Like right now, we don't have like a lot of like, you cannot make a team, you cannot make orgs inside Alai, you cannot, sharing is not the best. Like there's a bunch of these other features which are not core to what we're trying to do. And the competitors have all of those features. identifying like what is core to you. And in our case, that was like quality and simplicity versus what is not core, which is like a long list of features. Then one can demarcate things very clearly that, okay, these are the things which we might not do, or even if we do them, the design doesn't need to be great. They don't need to handle every single edge case for everyone. Then, okay, we keep that in a separate bucket. But the bucket where we want to be the best at, we absolutely prioritize that. We get that right. And ideally, what you want to do is keep that bucket of things that you prioritize as little as possible, as small as possible, because you only have very few resources. This is why like building startups is not a complete science, it's an art. You have to design that bucket. You have to think about what is the least set of things that you can put in that bucket, which you're going to get, at least going to try to get them absolutely right. And we have made mistakes ourselves. Like sometimes we put so many features in and then realize that, okay, we are 4 months in, we still haven't shipped them. Half of our users are never going to care about this feature, which is also why you don't put things in bucket once and then just keep them that way. You should be constantly reprioritizing. Me and my co-founder Krishna, almost every week or like even more often, we are always asking ourselves, are we still doing the right things? And then sometimes the answer is honestly no. And that's when you have to like be like, okay, yeah, like we know the answer is no. Let's think about what can we do differently. Prioritizing and constantly prioritizing. That's the name of the game. And yeah, like I don't know how to get it perfectly right, but at least like trying to do that much is like a step forward.
And the more you do this in the right direction, the more intuitions you develop. And then all of a sudden, at some point, if you have been going in at least the right direction somewhere with the right speed, you can start seeing like a very strong differentiator and a very clear roadmap. So you spoke about your co-founder. I'm not exactly sure how big is the team right now, but I'm curious about a few things. Pricing, co-founders, and building a team around a vision. Which do you want to deep dive in or discuss? Which one sounds like the coolest to you?
Let's talk about co-founders. I think like that's one of the most important things in a startup. Let's talk about that.
Let's go. I do have a few thoughts. It's hard. Building companies is hard. Early stage companies, it feels like you need to be able to do so much. It's not just I can build things. I feel that a lot of engineers just get excited about an idea that they had and they want to build it, and that's right. But that's not how companies work. You need to have a holistic view of the market, other companies, what you want to do, who you want to solve this for, how you want to grow, how you want to position it yourself, what prices do you want to charge, how does your pricing strategy evolve, how do you report to stakeholders, how do you raise money, how do you create a marketing plan and communications, how do you sell more, how do you improve your sales process, and so on and so forth. Then you have operations, aligning team, having best practices in terms of management, making sure everyone's growing their career. You got the point. You could have said that yourself. And all of that you have to share with a co-founder. Is your co-founder technical? First question.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you are two technical co-founders. Okay, so I'm assuming that this answer is going to be very unique to you, but I'm sure that there are first principles behind them. What are your lessons learned, things that yourself at Meta 4 years ago might not have known that you've learned today that you would like tell to yourself?
This is what I realized when I was at Meta itself and what I chose to carry over to Alai. The single most important thing at work is the people you're working with. Everything else changes. The projects that you're working on changes. Very often your ideas change, your teams change, your role changes, but the way you feel is going to be a function of the people around you. And I had some amazing people around me when I really used to love working with them, and I had some people who were not that amazing, and then I used to feel terrible. So the first thing when I was leaving Meta, it was clear to me that okay, I want to work with a co-founder who I love working with, who I can work with, and I can work with for long periods of time. And that to me was like way more important because like a lot of people, like especially when they're like starting startups, they say like, okay, the skills need to be complementary. One of you should do this, the other should have like the exact opposite skills. And maybe there's some truth in that, but like, I don't think that's as important. What's more important is do the two, three, four of you, do you generally enjoy being with each other? And as you mentioned, scar tissue, like, yeah, like for sure there's scar tissue when you've been working with someone for that period of time. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. When are you going to have your first fights? When are you going to fight about something? When are you going to have differences in opinions or like different directions that you want the company to take? Those things are just going to happen. Like at the start, you think that, okay, you can get someone who's perfectly aligned with you. That's not reality. That's fiction. You're going to have those differences. I think that's more important where you accept that you're going to have those differences, but you find someone once you like have those differences, you can like talk about them. You can discuss them day in and day out. And after you talk about them, you still want to work with each other. You still want to be on the same journey together. A lot of people ask me, like, how do you know you have found the right co founder? I tell them, you don't until unless you have had your first fights. Because only when you have had your first fights would you actually know that do you actually care about this relationship? And do you actually think that this is the right team to build this? I think what I carried over from Meta was this knowledge that, okay, I have to work with someone I really enjoy working with. We had initial fights and initial differences. And as we emerged stronger through them, that's when I knew that, okay, this is the right team. This is the right person to be building my company with. And honestly, as you mentioned, there's so many different things to be doing in a startup. I don't know how solo founders do it. I feel like it's just so much nicer when you just have another person who cares about the company as much as you, who you can always talk to and be honest about the current state of the business, the current state of problems. So I think it's just very, very important. Even as technical builders or anything else, I would say like everything else changes. Like the technology changes, tech stack changes, your tools change. The two things to optimize for are the people you're working with and the problem that you're trying to solve, because you need both. It's not that you need one. In one case, I had the perfect problem, but not the perfect team. I would not choose that. I would rather choose like a less perfect problem and a more perfect team than just going all in on one dimension, because I think you sort of need a balance of both.
Yeah, 100%. Relationships are definitely the name of this game, I guess. Being impressed by the people you build with, seeing traits that are very impressive, that you respect, seeing them show up again and again, consistently, being as hard worker as you and surprise you with their ideas and how they're able to learn things differently than yourself and that you can learn from and become better together is what you're looking for. But to your points, fights will happen, differences of opinion will happen. I think there is a very important skill in managing conflicts and like understanding how do I feel about this? How should I communicate? Maybe you don't need to communicate right now. Maybe it's not the right call. Maybe you just need to wait and think through things.
Yeah.
Because then you can hurt the relationship. So I think that being successful at this game is also like a big part. It's relationships for sure. Do you want to add anything on that?
No, I think you covered it perfectly. Managing conflicts is very, very important. For most people, or for a lot of people, managing conflicts is avoiding conflicts. What good companies do is they embrace conflict. They take conflict head on. They know when to keep it in, but they don't keep it in too long, and they bring it out in the open and discuss it honestly and openly. Ultimately, these conflicts do happen. They happen always, and then they're not even bad. They're healthy, because only when someone challenges you can you actually take a step back and think about what's the right path forward. The last thing which I'll say on this relationship is like it's the only thing which is there when nothing else is there for you. Because when you start off, you don't have product market fit, you don't really have investors, you don't really have users, and things go south. As in, you might lose some of these things, but that relationship is the only thing that you have. You want to build a relationship in a way where in the darkest times, in the lowest of the lows, you can still count back on it and still use that as a foundation to further grow the company.
I guess YC should have like a branch of emotional EQ. So we mentioned a lot of things, product, speed, co-founders. There are so many cool and interesting topics to discuss. But from everything that we said, I also feel that we've covered important things from building a startup. I think that for the people who are listening to us, they will be keen into hearing your building processes or tools, maybe. So I don't know how much you can share, but what is currently working for you in terms of building? How much are you adopting? Maybe Codex, Cloud Code, Cursor, Windsurf, Devin, any of those tools? Do you follow any pattern of building cycle, release? And by the way, how big is the team currently at Alai?
5 engineers and like 3 designers.
So you have 3 designers. That's so
Yeah.
interesting. And 5 engineers counting you and your co-founders?
Yeah. So like the two of us still do some technical stuff. So there are 3 more engineers apart from the two of us, and then there are 3 designers who mostly focus on design.
Awesome. So what are you using these days and what is your team most excited? Do you have fun sprints where you all work together? I'm all ears, but I'm sure that you have some interesting processes around building a very cool product.
Yeah. The answer is like all of those things, like all the tools that you mentioned, we use, like we are either using or have used all of those tools, because like the way the industry is, it's changing so quickly on a weekly basis. But yes, I can dive into the specifics, and I can also talk about some of the realizations that we have had. Initially, we started off using Cursor a whole lot. And then as Cloud Code came in, we became like super convinced that like Cloud Code is just staying in a terminal and like having those agentic patterns is just better. So everyone on our team still uses a lot of Cloud Code. And then for a while, when GPT-5 came out, Codex felt even better. So some of us started using Codex. Honestly, we don't really have any standardization. We let everyone use whatever they want. But we have realized like two things. One, all of these tools are like fairly converging. Like they all implement the same things which other people have. So it converges very, very fast. And there's a lot of noise. Like if you go on Twitter or LinkedIn, every day someone's talking about some new tool. You can either be constantly trying out new tools or you can stay with something that's working for you. And only when something is like clearly better can you make the switch. We have tried to focus on that now, like where all of us are using a lot of Cloud Code. We use Codex sometimes, all of this inside Cursor. So it's a combination of all of those tools. And right now, we don't necessarily feel like trying other tools until unless someone really convinces us it's much better because we think this is not what we like. Our job here is not to like find out the perfect dev workflow. Our job is to like build Alai in the best possible way. The other thing which we have started recently doing, and I feel like that's working out well, is using like even as engineers, we now like building a lot more prototypes. So sometimes we come up with small problems and we just use like Figma Make or Lovable to make the smallest prototype because it's not even a code base. We just want to like have something that we can visually look at and see these are the engineering problems that are going to come up when we do the proper implementation of it. So very often for some of the new features, the first take is like, okay, can we build it quickly with a couple of prompts in Figma Make? Figma Make is what we are preferring even over Lovable. So we do that on Figma Make. We play with it. We get a sense of it, like, okay, this is what we need to tell the designers. This is what we need to do so that the design experience will good. And we already get a sense of like, okay, this is how AI implemented its code. These are the problems. That is extremely high ROI because very often in just half an hour or 1 hour, we are able to recognize the things which we would otherwise realize much later down the road. That is sort of the process. Can we come up with a prototype or can we write a doc? Let's do that quickly. Let's be as quick here. Let's not overthink it. Then let's feel it together. Let's test it together. Let's see how it feels. Let's get feedback. And once the feedback is, and then let's use all these tools to actually like write code. But at the same point of time, I feel like it's very important to like when you're using these tools to not just be driven by them, you still want to be in the driver's seat and review those things. And that's the issue and challenge which all of us face. How much do we trust these tools versus how much do we like still rely on being in the driver's seat? It's a very different way to code, like for everyone in industry. It's a very different way to code. Like how do you like combine these things in the right way? And everyone's learning together and we are trying to learn and find the right balance as well.
Yeah, 100%. I feel that what I've been saying recently is that you need to be using those tools very heavily and try to get as much of the vision, like as big of the scope you can get and try to one shot it, both front end and back end. I like to recommend to start by defining the UX. You can even get a first sense because it has access to your code base with Cloud Code, for example. You can get like a mocked UX and you can iterate on that. And then you can like take everything you need in the stores and then you move to the backend and you one shot all the endpoints because you give it the right structure. So that's doable. That can make a lot of mistakes too. What I've heard people complain about is that, but I'm just a peer reviewer right now. I'm just reading all the files. And my kind of short answer is like, yes, you are, but you're extremely fast and you can review all of that. The other side of this that I say is that you still need to know how to code. You still need to know how to assess the system and the architecture and the code. And you still need to improve the skill. So like take time to break things down and understand the concepts so that you improve as an engineer, so that you can channel those tools so that they do more in less time. But you need that balance. Do you have any thoughts on that balance between being hands-on, increasing as an engineer and like skills and understanding of systems and like speed of using those tools and get as much done as possible in the minimum time?
Yeah. One of the biggest problems in the industry today is that people are just trusting these tools too much. They're like letting these tools do too much for even things outside of prototypes where like companies and like people are just getting used to this workflow where they ask like some agent to write code. Some AI is also reviewing the code. They don't even really look at the code. It's just like a very cursory pass and like not a lot happens there. And in a few weeks, they completely lose sense of what's there in the code base. And then they become very slow. Like they have like lost control over their own code base. I think that is a mistake. People probably have already realized it or will realize it in the future. A couple of days ago, I posted this on Twitter where I said that AI has made writing bad code that works 20x faster and writing good code that works 5x faster. 5x is a lot slower than 20x. What a lot of people need is the wisdom to just choose 5x. Like 5x is great. It can still help you write great code. It will be slower than writing, giving everything to AI and going 20x as fast. But it will be a lot better in the long term because you will stay in control. You will know what's going on and you'll be able to course correct the AI. In every field, I think that's the case, right? Like even if you're a jeweler, you need to be a jeweler to find out what are the real diamonds and what are not the real diamonds. Coding is very similar. Like sure, the AI can write the code, but you really need to understand code architecture patterns at a deep level to know what is actually good code and what isn't. At least right now, for the foreseeable future, that's going to be the case. We're going to realize very, very quickly what were products where like the foundation was just like wipe coded and put together versus what were products where actually people still use AI. They still use all these tools, but they use it in a way which is maintainable, where people can build upon that and where quality like ultimately comes out. Because I think we are in this like era where lots of AI products come in and then a small fraction of them which really focused on quality and like really solving the problem that they wanted to, only those will like survive. And yes, I feel like there's absolutely no way in which you can like, just give away all control of your code base. You might want to do that if you're non-technical and you're just building a hobby app or a prototype app or like an internal tool, but not for something which is like the core of your product or like the core of your business. And in our case, having a good solid code base is the core of a product. We're definitely not comfortable giving full control to AI.
Do not give full control to AI, please. Or at least do it very well.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
vibe code, vibe engineer. There is
Yes.
this new term. Yeah, I feel that if you have the right structure and the right principles of engineering in your code base, especially in your backend, and you have the right structure, then maybe like some files can pass, but
Yeah.
because you can go back in the code base and you can like all the files are separated and it's clean and you have maybe different layers, etc. Then it's more approachable and maybe you can ship something faster and come back on it. You might also in your peers add some things that you've learned from previous release that didn't went so well and that you had to go back and fixes. I like the idea of having humans reviewing peers, maybe AI assisted, but just to be very specific here, maybe like the code didn't write like the token permission on an endpoint, and that's very important. Or maybe like it's not managing properly the permissions, or sometimes it does some weird things. And so being very sure that you cover all of that is very important. And you can use AI as a teacher to learn 20x faster
Yeah.
and review your code and understand what you just did. Any thoughts to add on that?
In a nutshell, I would say like a lot of the philosophy with AI should be like, okay, do it once yourself, do it well, and let AI do it from then onwards. So like set the pattern, document it, make sure the pattern is right. And then very often the way code works is like you're writing one of two kinds of code. Either you're building a new pattern, like a new, completely new interface, completely new abstraction. You should still like talk to ChatGPT, like get some prototype out, but make sure you're fully in control. And then only once you have fully established the pattern, then you should like make AI implement that pattern for the next 5 times or the next 10 times. So do it once, do it well, and let AI take it from there. That's how I would say it.
Adding on top of this, if you have the proper context on your code base and your code base is clean, you can really tell it to have like a holistic understanding of what you're building and look at all the relevant files and make sure that to read it. And because it read it and you already have clean code, then it's going to go in the right direction, or at least it should, depending on what you're building. So that's definitely something that I've enjoyed myself. Building things right the first time. Yeah, 100%. Love that. Super cool. Well, I just want to do one more question. Do you want to share a little bit about the product? Like, do you want to share a screen, share something that you want to share and that we can see? It can be anything. It can be an article, the product, something that you find interesting lately that you're excited about, some feedback, some use cases, anything. What comes to mind?
Yeah, I can show a little bit of the product and like how it works. Let's take a look at Alai. This is content for like a pitch deck for a daycare company. Basically, this company is trying to make a daycare near major offices and then trying to sell that to businesses directly so that businesses can offer it as a perk to the employees. So we just put in a bunch of this stuff in. Let's also paste a couple of photos of the founders. These are just some stock images. Let me paste that here and let me paste the other photo. And after this, we'll just let Alai do its thing where basically we have 10 slides here. So we're going to choose 6 to 10 slides. Basically, you click on this button and you get shown an outline. This takes about 45 seconds, and these outlines for each slide would come one by one. So in this stage, you are like looking at the overall story of your presentation. You're not necessarily looking at the layout or the design of each slide. You just want to make sure that the story flows in the way you want it to, that the narrative is correct, and then you can make those edits. For example, maybe you want to like reorder them, so you can reorder them this way. You can change any of the content on the slide. You can add more images, but this is like this step where even before you generate any slides, you want to make sure that we have done a good job of getting your story correct. Now let's generate all the slides. Basically, the entire product design has been done in a way where we want you to get to your first draft super quickly. We don't want you to like spend many hours trying to get to a first draft. Our aim is that you get to a slide which looks good, and then you take it from there. So for example, over here, we should show you like four different options for your title slide. And that is one of the unique things that we do. We don't, as we talked about in detail, like a lot of getting to the perfect slide or the perfect output is about discovery. We think discovery happens best when you look at multiple options together. So here, let's say I choose this option. And then similarly, for a slide like this, this image might probably doesn't make sense here, like it's a founder image. I might do something like this. But what I'm getting for each slide is many different ideas of how I visualize this content. And then let's say if I choose this, then I'm down to this slide and then I have a bunch of ways of editing the slide. I can change the layout. I can change colors, or maybe I want them to be displayed in 2x2 grid. There are a bunch of different features which are available after you choose a slide, but that's the idea that for each slide in the presentation, we're giving you many different options. Not all the options look great, but the idea is that at least some of the options will do a good job of conveying your point and give you a good starting point. For example, here, this is a timeline of how the GTM strategy would work, where they would target employers or landlords and what they would do within the first 90 days. So let's choose this. Obviously, going from here to a perfect presentation is going to take much longer. It's still going to take me another hour. But what Alai has already managed to do is on some content, it gave us a very solid first draft. And then it's super easy for me to like take it from here and make it perfect. So maybe I want to add colors here and then I can just choose multi and this would become colorful. Or maybe I want to like put this thing in the table. So I can just choose this and I can say something like, okay, let's select this element and let's convert this into a timeline. And it would just convert this into a timeline. If we step back for a second, the way Alai works is the following. You put in your content, you get a great first draft. And then from there onwards, we think about what are the ways in which you might want to edit your slides. Some of them might be manual edits without AI. Some of them, like this one, it might be an AI edit. But we make both of them possible so that things which are best done manually, you can still do them. You're in full control. We talked about control a whole lot. But things which are best done with AI, you still have AI out there to help you on making those edits. And then over time, as you spend some more time on this deck, you can get to a very perfect looking presentation.
Yeah, I love this. Yeah, I would have many more questions, templates, brand assets, but I love how you showcase the unique UX and approach of slides and how the components can very much adapt to what you need. And that is a very elegant. It seems that it's a very nice balance between the control that I have on the layouts and the AI features and UX augmented experiences. I know we're at time, so any plugs? Are you hiring? Should people go on your landing and try it out? What are some things that you feel like sharing?
Yeah, for sure. People should definitely try out our product. We did a big launch last week. You can go to the product on getalai.com, or you can just reach out to me and I'll be very happy to like walk you through the product, show what's possible. And right now, given we are still early, we do make sure like every single user who uses Alai that they end up with a great experience. So if you just need help making your next pitch deck, making your slides for like marketing use case or anything else, you should just reach out to us, like use Alai, and we'll make sure that you end up with a great deck. Like both me and Krishna, we are very, very responsive. We love talking to our users and we always make sure that they end up successful. We want to go the extra mile. Like it doesn't really matter whether you're a free user, you're a paid user. You just want to make sure that you end up with a really good looking deck so that it serves your purpose. So yeah, you should absolutely feel free to use our Alai. You should, and then reach out to us if anything comes up. We would love to help you.
Amazing. Well, I had so much fun having you on the podcast. I could ask you thousands of questions more. Thank you very much for joining. I look forward to our second episode where we do more deep dives on all of that. Thanks, man. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Thomas.